Good morning to you all and a warm welcome to VU's People and News 0933 KFM. It's 7 minutes past 9 o'clock. My name is Judith Atim, and today we are talking about Uganda's political landscape and the quest for truth and justice. And I'm pleased to be joined in the studio by Honorable Medad Lubega Segona, who is the Member of Parliament for Busiro East. Good morning, Honorable.
Hey, good morning to you, George, and to our listeners.
Good to have you on the show.
To you, Michael.
And, of course, Honorable Michael Kabaziguruka, former MP Nakawa. He's also chairperson, PFF Electoral Management Committee. Good morning, Honorable Kabaziguruka.
Well, a very good morning to all our listeners and to you, my colleagues in the studio.
Well, good to have you. So, before we delve into our topic for today, of course, let's take a quick look at the issues that made it in the news in the last week. And then I'll give you an opportunity to each pick randomly what you want to comment on. And then we'll pick it up from there. So, of course, I think the biggest news this week has been the apology by President Yoweri Museveni and the First Lady, Janet Museveni, which took place on Sunday. The two apologized to the people of Uganda and Ugandans in general for the mistakes they have made over the last 40 years of their rule. On top of the apology, they also asked God to accept repentance on their own behalf, their agents and the people they entrusted with office who have abused the portfolios they hold. And in response, Buganda Kingdom, through the Information Minister, Israel Chitoke, said the apology can only be accepted after fulfillment of a set of conditions. And this also will form the basis of our conversation this morning. We shall be talking about that a little later. But also the National Unity Platform's former Deputy President in charge of Buganda region, Matthias Mpuuga, on Tuesday, unveiled a new party, the Democratic Front. Emerging out of the Green Partisan Party, Mpuuga, a Commissioner of Parliament, seeks to use this new political home to front leaders at all political offices in the coming 2026 general elections. And the High Court on Monday nullified the election of Elias Nalukola as Member of Parliament for Kawempe North and directed the second respondent in the case, that's the Electoral Commission, to organize a fresh by-election. The High Court cited irregularities that substantially affected the results of the 2021 of the recent vote. The petition challenging NUP's Nalukola's win was filed by NRM's candidate Farida Nambi, in which she accused Nalukola and his agents of several electoral malpractices in breach of the Parliamentary Elections Act, which Justice Bernard Namanya concurred with. Nalukola, through his lawyers, disregarded the ruling, and they issued a notice of intention to appeal. And from across the Nile, herdsmen, commonly known as the Balalo, have been given 14 days to vacate northern Uganda or face forceful eviction. The state minister in charge of northern Uganda, Dr. Kenneth Omona, read the directive saying that the president has ordered for fresh eviction of the migrant cattle keepers to be carried out by the different security agencies in the region. However, the Chief of Defense Forces, General Muhoozi Kainerugaba, posted online that the decision was a directive from the UPDF High Command and that he would go himself to the north to ensure that this eviction is done properly. And on Monday, the UPDF announced that they have, with immediate effect, suspended all military and defense cooperation with the Federal Republic of Germany, citing serious allegations against the German ambassador to Uganda, Matthias Schauer. The declaration comes amid what Ugandan military officials describe as credible intelligence implicating the ambassador for engaging in subversive activities targeting Uganda's internal security. However, Germany has responded, saying that the accusations were absurd and did not hold any merit and have rejected them forthwith. And yesterday, Friday, the Democratic Party began its two-day 12th National Delegates Conference in Mbarara, where Justice Minister Norbert Mao is tussling it out with MPs Richard Sebamala and Lulu Mebaiga for the party presidency. Earlier in the week, violence erupted at the DP's headquarters along Balintuma Road between supporters of Mao and his opponent, Richard Sebamala, leaving senior party officials injured. And also on Thursday, the Nakawa Chief Magistrates Court sent Dr. Kiza Besigye, Obeid Lutale, and Captain Dennis Oola to face trial in the High Court for treason and misprision of treason charges. The committal was after the Chief State Attorney Richard Birivumbuka told the court that investigations were complete. Chief Magistrate Christy Nantege committed the three in the absence of Besigye's lawyers, who stormed out of court, protesting the decision by the Chief Magistrate not to hold and refer the case to the High Court. Besigye and Lutale were arrested on November 17th, 2024 in Kenya, allegedly with pistols and other items, while Captain Oola was reportedly recruited in the ploy in October 2023 and expressed support for the alleged coup via WhatsApp. And on a sad note, tribute messages continue to pour in following the death of renowned Kenyan writer Ngugi wa Thiong'o, who passed on at the age of 87 while in Atlanta, USA. On Wednesday, he will be remembered as one of Africa's most prolific writers and literary geniuses of all time. His critical literature works saw him get censored, imprisoned, and forced to exile during the late Daniel Arap Moi's presidency. And on the international scene, President Donald Trump held a high-stakes phone call with Russian President Vladimir Putin on Monday as he continued his push for an end to Moscow's 3-year invasion of Ukraine after last week's peace talks in Turkey. Following the calls, Trump told reporters at the Oval Office on Monday that he remained confident that a deal between Russia and Ukraine would be reached soon. Quite a packed week, locally, regionally, and internationally. So, gentlemen, your quick thoughts, although I would request that we don't talk about the apology right now. So anything else you can respond to, because we will be discussing the apology. That will form the basis of our topic for today. But I wanted him to go first, but he says, you go first.
Well, first, you gagged us.
I gagged you. Okay, feel free.
No worries. And I know where it's coming from because KFM has been gagged before, so... No.
But we are discussing this. Yes.
You gagged us by, reading out a list of issues that you think are topical. You have done that. What do they all point to is the decay and destruction unto which our country has been treated. Where right from Narukola's election, with everything that happened, shows you the level to which the country can descend. Something has been circulating on WhatsApp lately, where Genome 7 was saying at some point that law can be used as an instrument of oppression. And I think he made reference to apartheid. Now, when you see what happened to Narukola in Kawempe, and then the next thing you see, they go and use the same information to say there was disorder in the election, reason whereof it should be nullified. That shows you the level of destruction and decay. When you talk about the other issues, the German ambassador and the UPDF altercation, again, same thing. Because ordinarily we know that in matters diplomatic, it's the Ministry of Foreign Affairs which is the lead agency. In this one, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs has not said anything, not uttered a single word. But the UPDF. And why? Because prior to the appointment of General Hoskanya Rugaba by his father as CDF, you saw the elevation of that office in a mock ceremonial activity where Genome 7 handed over certain instruments and powers to his predecessor, General Wilson Basumbadi. I was talking to somebody who is not so deep in these matters of politics, but I knew he was. That's when I knew he's deep. He said he has given those powers and instruments to this one. You wait next. What is coming? He's going to appoint his son. And I said, no. If I had put my money on the line, it would have gone. So I said, no. I know that Museveni himself is destructive. I know he's bad. But I don't think he has reached those levels. And within, was it a space of 2 months? The man did it. So now that the UPDF has taken over the role of foreign affairs by, speaking for the country on matters diplomatic, you see the UPDF taking over again from your list, taking over internal affairs, saying, no, I'm going to go and evict the Balalo, in a rather very disorderly manner. It shows you how institutions have been individualized and how individuals have been institutionalized. And that comes with the destruction of institutions in this country. I think from your list, that's what I can comment on. But again, something which touched my eyes during the week was when I saw KCC sending warnings to people who litter the streets, throw garbage, etc. I was so excited. I can tell you, I don't think anyone has been excited by this as myself. And let me be on record whether I'm going to seek for a vote or not. People who litter our roads, our streets, our public spaces must be treated with the highest level, with the highest force necessary. You see, a person is driving a car, lowers down his screen, throws a bottle into the middle of the road that he doesn't clean. But now KCC must also style up. You see these cleaners in Kampala, the sweepers, when they are sweeping, they got the dust and silt in the road, go sweep it into the manholes. And you keep asking now, where are we headed? Just a few weeks ago, I had a conference in Kigali. From the conference center to a place I knew is called Kiyovu. I would walk after the conference for 5 kilometers, I think about 5 kilometers. I would walk. And I never saw a single piece of polythene, a single piece of paper, not even a lid of a bottle of a plastic thing or anything on the street. The street is clean. You would not interface with dust anywhere. But now you come to Kampala, and I was told that General Museveni said in Rwanda they can do it because they have a small city or population. I laughed. I actually learned that Kigali is bigger than Kampala. The city is bigger than Kampala. You would go to their Katanga, the slum, and the roads are tarmacked. And I said, who bewitched us? Who bewitched this country? Then I remembered the scenario when General Museveni and General Garang, remember when they jumped over a cow? They slaughtered the cow, jumped over it, cooked it and ate it. I said, then someone bewitched us.
But also, before you go, Honorable, on Thursday, Parliament, you guys approved the proposal by government to borrow from the Afrexim Bank 270 million euros, right? And another 230 million from EcoBank Uganda and the Development Bank of Southern Africa to finance our national budget. There are concerns, of course, by Ugandans about the burden that Parliament places on the taxpayer. I would just like you to comment very quickly or briefly on that before I move to Honorable Kabazigirka.
I think it's two-way. It's two-way traffic. Number one, you have a budget. Every country must have a budget. You must finance your activities.
Absolutely.
Where does money come from? It comes from taxes, majorly in Africa, from taxes and borrowings. Ordinarily, I would not have a problem with borrowing. Of course, I was opposed to that, to the loan, for reasons I'm going to give. Ugandans must accept that we must either pay taxes or borrow to finance our activities. The major concern should be which activities do we finance, what are our priorities. There's a lot of wasteful expenditure in this country, without which we would not be borrowing this heavily, and without which we would not need to overtax, or we would overtax to deliver services. The borrowing itself has reached astronomical levels, and I agree that the burden is huge on Ugandans. If this money was not stolen, first and foremost, and it was put into serious development activities or projects, we would say that the borrowing is okay. I'll give you an example. When I became a member of parliament in 2011, there are places which didn't have electricity in my constituency. Of course, they are today. But those towns which have since been connected to the national grid, places like Mende, places like Baka, places like Banda, when you go there today, the level of development is incredible, because somebody has a fridge, sells his cold water, sells his juice, and so on and so forth. That's employment. Someone runs a welding business. We need electricity. So if someone borrows for electricity, it is explainable. If someone borrows to lower the tariff of electricity so that people stop cutting down forests and our trees, you would understand. I visited Agago. We had, now the Agago man is in the studio. we had power that we were not evacuating at, is it Achua?
Yes.
At Achua. Yes. Yesterday, but one, in my SASE committee, we were informed that now that power is being evacuated and we can use that power, we can sell it, and so on and so forth. Those are legitimate causes for which I would authorize borrowing. But the question is, how much of the money is borrowed, is stolen, is swindled? How much of that money, at the point of paying back, how much are we paying back? Are there alternative sources? Can we do a priority list in knowing what we should be investing in and what we should not be investing in? Mm-hmm. I looked at the, if you followed the Honorable Semu Uganda, with all the comics that he put in, get the real story of how expensive the presidency has become in this country. Look at the cost of public administration in this country. A parliament as big as a secondary school. You have a whole tribe of RDCs. You have 147 districts currently. And you ask yourself, all for what? Each district goes with an expenditure in billions. If we were sensitive and sensible enough to avoid those things, we would not be borrowing. So that goes back to my original point, the level of destruction in this country. Because the institutions have been individualized and the individuals have been institutionalized, nobody has survived that wrath. Mm. Be it your parliament, be it the judiciary, the executive. I think we all sinned and fell short of God's glory. Look, I mean, I did tell you about the presidency, how expensive the presidency is. Everybody knows.
We shall come to that a little later. Let me take this opportunity to acknowledge the arrival of our other guests. Professor Maurice Ogengalatigo, we had him last week. He's here with us again. Always a pleasure to have you join us, Professor.
Thank you very much, Judith, and this is a surprise for me.
I can imagine.
Having these two gentlemen in the studio, and a very pleasant surprise.
Thank you.
I think my weekend is going to be good.
We'll come to you a little later, but we had just looked at the key events that shaped the week, and we'll come to you for your comments.
Yes, and my apology. I actually went to Gulu for some urgent meeting. I arrived in Gulu 10 o'clock on Thursday night. The meeting ended 6. I had to drive back. I arrived here around midnight.
Oh.
And when Steve called me, it was my deep sleep time. We talked and I went back to sleep. Only to wake up and see it was 10 minutes to 9. I had just to do things and rush.
Thank you. We do appreciate you for making it. Thank you. It's understandable. So let me come to you, Honorable Kabazigurukas. Again, from the issues that stood out during the week, which ones do you pick? 1 or 2? Just very quickly.
Well, Judith, it is quite disheartening that out of all the issues you noted, there is nothing that gives hope to us as a country, as a people. Everything we are discussing here is an indication that as a country we are headed for trouble and more trouble. You talk about the Nalukula issue, especially given that we're going into an election cycle. And, it doesn't give hope to a country that in 2026 things will be any different than they've been over the years. Mm-hmm. You look at the way the election was organized, the violence that we witnessed against the candidate, the voters, the media, and the way the court decided against the victim. You really wonder where we're headed. You talk about Germany, the way General Muhoozi and his Lieutenant Colonel Chris Magezi are managing that. Really, it paints a very bad picture for us as a country. That General Muhoozi is now in charge of our foreign affairs is quite a sad spectre. That all institutions are now under capture. That not even the Minister, really, of Defense, if we were to take it in that direction, we all know that the right channel would be through the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. But if we were to take it to that level, you see, if the Minister of Defense commented, probably you'd say, okay, but CDF and the spokesperson, that is very unbecoming and very saddening for us as citizens of the country, both national and internationally. It paints a very bad picture that the CDF can do that. Mm-hmm. And the other issue that stands out for me is the manner in which the issue of Dr. Besigye, Obed Lutale, and also Captain Ola has been managed. Doctor was abducted from Kenya on November 16th, mm-hmm. and arraigned before the GCM on the 20th of November. Now, that is about 196 days later. As of the day we were in court, it was now 196 days. Now, the law in this country is quite clear. Under our constitution, Article 23, 6C, clearly says that if somebody has been on remand for over 180 days without committal to the High Court for offences that are triable by the High Court, that person should be eligible to get mandatory bail. And the same, I think, is emphasized under Section 76 of the MCA.
Proceed.
No, those are my fruits of my work. So when you hear Michael citing the law with vigor.
Yeah, so under Section 76 of the MCA, still it says that if anybody appears before a magistrate and that person has been on remand for 180 days, before any business is done, that person should be given mandatory bail under conditions that the court may set.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it is very disheartening that when we appeared before the magistrate in Nakawa, the chief magistrate in Nakawa, she decided to rely on guidelines from the principal judge. I think she cited guidance number 10 that she relied on to say that if a matter is triable by the High Court, mandatory bail should be sought in the High Court. Now, the next guideline is to the effect that in the event that you choose to take that path, the next thing would be to send the file to the High Court for consideration. Now, after relying on Guideline 10, then she refuses to abide by Guideline 11. And she says, well, I will not send the file. You are free to go to the High Court and seek your mandatory bail. In the interim, I am giving the state the right to go ahead and amend the charge sheet and also commit, which I find very disheartening, given our laws. And I think it would be irregular for the magistrate to rely on the guidelines, not the constitutional provisions. So that all points to a judiciary that is cowed and currently well subdued by the powers that be.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much. Let's come to you, Professor. But also, well, you're free to comment on any issue, but I think I would also like to hear your thoughts on the Balalo question, the eviction that government has ordered for, and now we see the CDF saying he is actually traveling there to handle it himself.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry that when I was rushing, I didn't think about putting you on.
So you didn't.
I didn't want also to be distracted from driving because I was in a rush.
Okay.
Yeah, but Mike mentioned two things that are to me very important before I come to the Balalo thing. The happenings in Nakawa Chief Magistrate's Court. It is not by accident. We are now facing the consequences of things that have been happening with the judiciary for a very long time. I was leader of opposition. I happened to be, by mandate that time, a member of the Parliament Appointments Committee. And I have a case of a particular judge who was to be appointed, and the CV didn't even mention the age of the judge, and mentioned a qualification that I doubted. But the speaker at that time, Speaker Sekandi, I think had decided that person probably would get appointed. But Speaker Sekandi doesn't decide, but I think he was under pressure to get that person appointed, as we say in Uganda, from above. So in the proceeding, I asked the speaker, I said, if something happened to you and you had to appear before this person as a judge, how would you feel?
Both as a lawyer and a litigant.
And we passed, but I had my facts. So when we broke off for lunch, I actually contacted the institution where the person claimed the qualification, and it wasn't there. Secondly, the legal firm, I knew that person did not practice. There was a company lawyer. So I sent my people to the registry, and they brought the registration of that legal firm. And she was not on that firm as a partner or anything. So then deputy speaker went for the deputy speaker came to preside. I said, Madam Speaker, this appointment is not okay. These are the facts. So we reverse and we resolve. Months later, we went for a judicial commission, this annual meetings they hold.
Yes.
So when Ginger, and at lunchtime, I was at the same table with this Chief Justice Odoki and Principal Judge, and then we start discussing. And Chief Justice said, that person has been appointed. We received the letter from. I could have done something about it, but I said it would look personal. I left it. But the point I'm making is simple. Even during Amin's time, the lawyers like him, who would be picked to be a magistrate or a judge, would be somebody whose record in practice is so solid. And the cases he or she would have won, the cases he or she would have lost, would indicate the balance of that person from the perspective of the law. That is how people got appointed. Now they look for somebody who can implement what they want. And as I speak, if Mike said, at the next election you lose an election and you decide to go to court and you go to any of those, it will be a mess. In fact, somebody very high up one day told me, he said, look, at least from the Court of Appeal upwards, it is still okay. But down, it is a complete mess. Unfortunately, they are also victims because they are made to do things that are immoral, that are against the law. How can guidance of the principal judge override an established law? How? Counsel, you help us.
Well, I think something akin to that happened when there was a decision of the registrar reversed administratively by the principal judge, and then it called for the intervention of the head of the commercial division, then Justice Mbiru, where he said, no, you cannot use an administrative decision to set aside or to interfere with the judicial decisions.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, the guidance of this principal judge cannot override law.
Yeah.
Okay.
It can't. So,
Absolutely.
So that but let me tell you, and Mike talked about it. What you see in Besige is just a prelude to the very dramatic scene we will witness in the coming elections. From the campaigns, people are going to be arbitrarily arrested, and if that matter of those UPDF amendment are not challenged and put in abeyance, that will be used. Not because somebody wants to cause chaos in this country, but it's because that is the only means left for this government to hold on to power. Because what can they tell us? After 40 years, what can they tell us? There's very little. The Balalo issue, I recorded the statement here the other time. And let me repeat it live. You see, it begs for a lot of questions. Who are these people? Where are they coming from? Does government know about it? If government does, what is the position of government on this matter? And why now? Because, like I said, actually was not discovered like the way Christopher Columbus discovered America.
The Balalo discovered actually.
Because if you discover, you can have a claim over a territory. But you see, the French have this thing, assimilation. And in Uganda, one time I wrote an article about the land issues in Uganda here. I said, you check any non-Uganda who is a settler and owns land in Uganda got assimilated. Many of them came as workers, and then they build relationship, organic relationship with the community, and acquired wealth, acquired land, and even have Uganda names. Such a person, on what basis would you even quarrel with such a person?
No way.
No way, because he's part of your community. But all of a sudden, boom, the next thing you see about 100 heads of cattle, and you said, what is this? Said, some Mulalo has bought land here. Said, how?
Bought from who?
But how in the first place? How does it happen? That you just come and boom. There's no livestock project in actually where government gives you resources the way we gave Aswa Ranch, Agago Ranch those days, or in Bunyoro. No. So the challenge of the Balalo presence in Acholi is far more fundamental. That is why I've urged my people not to politicize it.
Mm-hmm.
It is far more fundamental than that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. It's time for us to take a break, and then we return and dive into our topic, which is Uganda's political landscape and the quest for truth and justice. My name is Judith Atim. Welcome back from the break. You're still tuned to Views, People and News here on 933 KFM. My name is Judith Atim, and we're talking about Uganda's political landscape and the quest for truth and justice. Once again, my guests are Honorable Medad Lubega Segona, who is Member of Parliament for Busiro East constituency. He's also the chairperson of Parliament's Committee on Statutory Authorities and State Enterprises and former State Minister in Buganda government. I have with me also Honorable Michael Kabaziguruka, former MP Nakawa. He's also chairperson of the PFF Electoral Management Committee. And last but not least, I have with me Professor Maurice Ogangalatigo, who is a seasoned politician. He's also a former leader of opposition in Parliament. So now I want us to focus on the apology by the President and the First Lady and its implications. Also, I'd like to hear your views on the question of transition and Uganda's political future, because the First Lady actually talked about this a lot. Just very quickly, if we to just go back through that message from the President and the First Lady, the apology to Buganda and Uganda for the mistakes that they've made over the past 4 decades. But also at that same function, of course, the First Lady, during the commissioning of the religious leaders for her daughter's church, mentioned something that I think has got a lot of Ugandans talking. She urged these leaders to help lead the country to a successful transition. She also made the statement that as a country, we are at a defining moment in our nation's history, experiencing a significant transition. And the key word for most people, of course, is transition. And we also know that in the 2021 elections, of course, the NRM lost massively in Buganda. So I know you've probably talked about this in other platforms, but the potential motivations behind this apology by the President and the First Lady, what could be behind that?
I think the word you used, potential motivations, calls for theories. Potentially, what could have precipitated this? First of all, an apology by itself, in its own right, is a civilized way of dealing with issues, whether private or even public. So I cannot fail to thank God that revealed to his servants that there is need to apologize, because over the years I've spoken about the hemorrhage that has been inflicted onto Uganda by this family, be it social, economic, and political. And actually at the beginning I talked about the destruction of institutions, which eventually metamorphose into institutionalizing individuals and individualizing institutions. Over the years, I mean, if you say to Buganda, we were partners with them. I was young, but there's Uganda, there's something they call it Chibiye, that sin that we all inherited. So the sin of my forefather in partnering with Museveni is carried down to me, and it's a burden that I keep suffering with wherever I walk. And that's not to say that the government they removed was that of angels, but over the years there are broken promises that have been made, broken covenants with the people, not of Buganda, but Uganda. The entire country, I think, has been subjected to this kind of hemorrhage, the institutional hemorrhage. I think they fell short of telling us with exactness what they were apologizing for, because the church I go to, my faith, is that those who apologize, who repent in truth, you must repent in truth. There must be a full disclosure to the fullest, that, oh yes, the following. Mm-hmm. Now, when these two older parents came up and said, we apologize to the people of Uganda, the hemorrhage over the last 4 decades, look at the human rights record of Gen. Museveni. Look at the unexplained murders and deaths, both in Uganda and outside Uganda. And I want to look at this broadly. Mm-hmm. The entire country has suffered at the hands of this family. The Mukula massacre, the Atiak massacre, and so on. Exactly. All those, they remain unexplained. The human rights abuses that we have been subjected to as a nation. They were speaking at a time when some people, I believe, are still crying, learning Runyankore in their son's basement. So I was very quick to celebrate, it's good. They are coming up to apologize. But then I kept waiting to hear what they are apologizing for. That said, I'm an old Muganda man, and I'm one of the conservative ones, I must say. Ordinarily in Uganda, when an old man of that age came out to say the words that I saw the president speak, the people would say, this man is about to die. God forbid, because I don't want him to die. But let's assume, in a microscopic event, that he dies. Look at the crossroads where he's leaving the country. Look at the actions of his son. And who is the purported successor? Now, as a father, of course, I feel for him.
And the transition from where to
because
where?
the word they are using is transition. From what to what? I hope in their minds it is not transition from father to son. Because I've always said, whereas I feel for the president to have that kind of son, the person you're looking at as the potential customary heir, because he's the only son we know. At least I know. You know, that is understandable. It's a problem every parent may have. But please do not transfer that problem onto the country, onto the public. The shame and embarrassment to which your son has exposed the country. And, I mean, look at what he's doing. Within a space of 2 weeks, someone has picked quarrels with 4 countries. I think over the last 1 year, he has picked a quarrel with Ethiopia, with Kenya, with the DRC, with the UK, with Italy, with the US, and now with Germany as the latest episode, and so on and so forth. I think it would be very unkind to get that and say, the country, for me, I'm leaving, you suffer with this. Now that they are talking about transition, I'm one of those who think that there is need for national reconciliation. So that we speak in truth to each other and say, whereas some of us are mortals who may leave anytime, including me who is much younger than him, this country is here to stay. Because even God made a promise that he will never destroy the world in its entirety. He will never again. He said, I will never again. He made a covenant to us. So this country is here to stay. Where are we living it? In one of those days when they still thought I could join them, one of the emissaries who came to me said, you know, the old man thinks for him he's old, he's retiring anytime. He wants to leave the country in the hands of credible men like you, young people like you. I said, oh, so you mean he knows me and he knows that I'm credible? That's very good. Then let him switch on his radio and listen to me. I hope now he's listening to me. General Museveni, there is nothing wrong this country did to you or to your family. You owe us everything good because we gave you everything good. The only thing, even a wife, we even gave you a wife. Okay? But if you want more, you can tell us. This country has fed you. Not over the last 40 years, even before. This country has elevated you. Biblically, we say from ashes to grace, from grass to grace. We picked you as a country, probably when you were a toddler, or probably before you were conceived in your mother's womb. We made you president. You have moved places. What is it that you feel you find so hard to give us a level of independence, a level of satisfaction as a country? Now that you know you are going, wherever you are going, we don't know. Sit down with those stakeholders and say, for the following, I apologize. 2, going forward, this is how we should move. We agree as a country. By the way, at some point when we raised this issue of national reconciliation and dialogue, he said no. Those people are talking about national dialogue. When I approach them to come and work with me, they decline. We said, this is not what we mean. That dialogue means give Segona a job, give Latigo a job. No. I am okay being a farmer. I am okay being a lawyer. When I go into my farm and grow my coffee, I should be able to sell it and educate my sons and daughters the same way my grandfather did. Just look at one classical example where you choose to establish a coffee processing plant, one of its kind in the country. And where do you take it? You take it to Ntungamo. with public funds, which you have given to somebody who you gave 9.6 billion to teach Ugandans how to consume coffee. But where is the coffee coming from? The coffee is coming from Zombo. The coffee is coming from Buganda. The coffee is coming from Bugishu. So you transport the coffee to Ntungamo, process it, transport it back through Uganda and Bugishu, take it to Mombasa for export. Okay? The tribalization of this country, and of course lighting a potential fire for a particular ethnic group, which is innocent. Just a few, I think a month or 2 months ago, I was in Mbarara for 3 days. First for the burial of my brother, my friend, Major Kazora, and then for another function later on. I drove around Ankole. I found a group of hard-working men and women raising their cattle, organized in their circles, and so on and so forth. I even went deep in the village. I visited, I will mention a friend of mine called the Honorable Yaguma at his rural farm. I saw the poverty levels deep in those villages. But an impression has been created that those people are okay, and that those you see driving of necessity are fishing from the state. This brother of mine, Michael Kabazuguruka, who I went to school with, and he read my notes, I think that's why he speaks good English, is a Muchiga. Some people, when you find...
tell us if that's the reason you speak good English.
Thinks Kabazuguruka is a Munyankole.
Yeah.
Actually, up north, they all think we are the same tribe.
Yes.
And they also therefore think that we are fishing from the state. You cause that kind of thing. By the way, when I met with General 7 at Kaboja, when he was officiating the construction of the expressway, the Entebbe Expressway, I was in my first term as a member of parliament. One of the things he told me was that if I continue with my behavior, that was going to be my last time in parliament, my first and last time in parliament. And I also politely and respectfully told him, but sir, you will not be president to stop me anyway, because I'm also fighting to remove you. But the reason, he asked me the reason why I don't like him. I said, I have no problem with you, I like you. I asked him a question. During Obote's time, the rest of the country had ill feelings against Northerners. Okay? Justified or not. I said, you've had more time than Obote. Why do you think the country looks at Westerners as ultimate beneficiaries of your government? And you have had more time even to dilute that by not by word, but by action. By action. I said, when you see people talking about tribes in Uganda, you're the first person to say to detribalize. But how do you do it? Share the national cake in equity. The appointments you make. I live along Masaka Road. If you look at the sirens along Masaka Road, and it doesn't necessarily mean they are going to Mbarara or to Ankole and so on and so forth. My feeling is that they are going to Masaka. If they go beyond Masaka, a person who is in Busega and Chengera and doesn't know they are going beyond Masaka thinks the problem are the Masaka people. So I think over the last four decades, we have suffered in the hands of General 7. When he was coming, at some point I said, I told my grandmam that I have met Museveni. It was some evening, they sent me to go and buy milk, where we were buying milk. Of course, I started playing football, the milk itself was poured, and so on. But as I was coming back, I met Museveni. He was still in the bush. So I tell my grandmother, I have met Museveni. Said, oh, never mention it again, they will kill you. But then tell me, how was he dressed? I told him, no, by the time I met him, he had turned himself into a cat. You know, they used to say 7-year Fula Kappa. Imagine somebody who believed the story that the man turns himself into a cat. He's now a member of parliament 3 terms. The president is visibly tired. You can read it. I can only mention physically. The others I will not mention because I want to protect this station, but also fear the basement. But the president is visibly tired. We've all had parents. I first saw Professor Latigo when he was still in DP. I was a young secondary school man. I'm now seated in the studio with him discussing national issues. I'm sure if you put us outside and say, start running, he will not start. I will finish. But if you brought a boy of 20 years and you told me to start running with him, as I get off the ground, he will have finished the rest. It is a natural factor. We have never asked him to give us a successor. Even assuming he is elected, if there is any microscopic chance that he has been elected before, I do not think Ugandans have ever voted for him to give them a successor. What they want is an environment where the successor is developed and produced organically.
Is legitimate.
And legitimately. I mean, I can be president. One, I have the qualifications, I have the zeal, I have the love. But tell me that I can go and compete with somebody who has been given presidential privileges even when he's not president. He has been given powers to arrest, detain, and even kill, because he has promised. He said, Obesije, to get out of Luzira, he will either be in the coffin, okay, or he will have to kneel down before my father.
Thank you, Honorable.
And yesterday when I saw that Honorable Byanyima was pleading with the president, I said, maybe Muhoozi is honoring on that, which I did not believe, of course. But he even identified the spot where he will be shot from in Gulu. When was it in May?
Yeah.
We've been lucky that May has ended.
Gulu is a great place. That is where kingdoms were restored.
I hope he did not want to shoot him behind his uncle's house.
Let me. Thank you, Honorable Segona. Let me come to Honorable Kabaziguruka. Mistakes made by ourselves, our agents, and our representatives. What comes to your mind in regards to this statement? Specifically, what are the mistakes that they are alluding to? But also, when the First Lady talks about transition, what kind of transition do you think she's actually referring to?
Well, thank you, Judith. Ordinarily, an apology is a welcome gesture. But that apology should not be mere rhetoric. It should mean something. And as my brother, Honorable Segona, says, an apology should be clear. You must spell out where you think you've wronged us. Uganda, but also the entire country. Where does he think he has erred? And to what is he apologizing? To come out and simply read a statement and say, well, I apologize for my actions or inactions by myself or my agents, is not good enough. Whatever prompted that notwithstanding, in my opinion, President Museveni should have come out clearly to point out exactly what the apology entails and how we intend as a country to move forward post-apology. simply say, I apologize, and then things remain the way they are. The status quo is maintained. Nalukola is thrown out of parliament. Dr. Besigye is irregularly committed to prison. We have people in the basements. It is not a good sign. Now, regarding the issue of the transition, this is something that we have been discussing, and it is something that has come up before. I remember after the 2016 elections, a delegation of the EU leaders visited Dr. Besigye in Kasangati. And one of the issues that was on the table was the issue of a political transition. I think even before that, when my senior here, Professor Maurice Oginga-Latigo, was still a leader in the FDC, but also in Parliament, it is something that we had on the table. And we have always sought principled negotiations, principled dialogue. Structured dialogue leading to a transition. You know, in this country, we have never had a peaceful transfer of power. And it is our dream, it is our aspiration that we see that in our lifetime. So, when the First Lady talks about a transition, it is not something new. It is something we have always advocated for. A transition that should see this country moving on from General Kaguta Museveni to another leader. And this transition must be guided by the laws of this country. If General Museveni thinks that the transition should be from him to his son, well, we might have challenges there.
Might?
To the extent.
No, we will.
To the extent that it is treated in the manner of a monarch.
We will have challenges.
But to the extent that General Muhoozi is qualified under the laws, which I doubt, and to the extent that he is taken through the due process, through a free and fair election, then it is his entitlement. However, for General Museveni or the First Lady to think that they are going to impose their son, General Muhoozi, on this country is something that is unpalatable, that is uncouth and unbecoming, and that the people of Uganda are not going to accept. We, especially those of us on the opposition, have faced the wrath of General Museveni. We are all bruised. I have so many scars. To hear that there are so many other Ugandans out there in the basement, and to think that, you know, Mama is talking about a transition just by mere rhetoric, you know, especially, you know, given that she's a mother, I think is bordering on disgraceful. I would expect that as a family, they should really be fair to this country. This country has given them everything. This country has made them. General Museveni and the other siblings have had the privilege of living in mansions, in 5-star accommodation, traveling first class, studying in so many decent schools, all at our expense. I think we are at a point where they should be, thanking the people of Uganda and saying, yes, you have given us a lot. It is time to set you free. These people should be setting us free as a country. But if you look at what is actually happening, you realize that our predicament is not about to end. That these people are actually preparing themselves to tighten the chains and the noose around the country, which I think, and I want to appeal to the people of Uganda to stand out and be counted. We are going for an election, however, but and the challenges we shall face, given our history, our checkered history, I want to appeal to the people of Uganda to stand and be counted. We should be at a point where we say enough is enough. This country belongs to all of us, and we deserve to live in this country with dignity. And so we should stand and be counted.
Thank you, Honorable. Professor, still I'll throw the same questions to you, of course. The mistakes made, like your colleagues have submitted, seeming there have been, the whole country is in pain, the whole country needs healing, certainly. But what do you think, why in particular did they single out Buganda and then to Uganda, the apology? Yet, of course, we've seen a lot of problems happen, a lot of mistakes or ill actions in Buchoro, like you talked about, across from Karamoja to northern Uganda to West Nile to Buganda and all parts of the country. But also the transition question, what kind of transition do you think they are thinking about? Is it transiting from the president to the son, or do you think this is something different?
Well, my colleagues Medred and Mike actually expounded a lot on this matter. But there's one perspective that I've not seen anybody point out. That apology was jointly read by President Museveni and Mama Janet. That was not a state presidential function. Mm-hmm. The joint reading is not a presidential declaration of apology. That is a family statement. There's only one president with whom the buck stops. That is President Yoweri Museveni. Last year I was interviewed on my farm in Agago. Those who watched the UBC interview. And I said, you see, the NRM is like this big tree. It's huge, but it will not grow anymore. The other smaller trees will grow and overwhelm them. And in that interview, it's the first time that I was recorded telling the president to recognize that he has done what he can. His time had come, that he should accept. And to admit to Ugandans, forgive me, I tried my best, I failed in some places. I want you to sit down and agree on the Uganda after me. And I said, if he cannot be part of that dialogue, it is fine. If they decide that he must leave, he should also accept it and leave. And that process will define who will be the next leader. in a transitional process. I said that, and I did repeat. This apology to as a family is good. And by the way, in our actually culture, if somebody killed your relative and you have a window where you can respond with an unequal revenge. But once you have been stopped, that person will not now come and say, the revenge has been stopped and I walk around. No. The person will still remain in hiding, but send emissaries to say, can we talk? Because our brother recognizes the mistake he did. And then that process will allow a sit down where everything will be discussed openly, and then they'll say it is done.
Is that what you call matoput?
Yes. After that, it is said it is done, matoput is done, and I can assure you, Ugandans, as I said, are good people. They don't hate President Museveni, but they love their country more than him, because country comes first. The national anthem doesn't sing about the president; it sings about Uganda. All the three verses. God uphold you, the land of freedom. And that is what we as Ugandans seek to see realized in our country. If we do that, there can never be hatred. If we do that, there can never be anger. If we do that, there cannot be the sentiments, tribal sentiments, that are almost overwhelming us. Yep.
Okay. I think it's time for us to take a break, and then when we return, we will still continue with this discussion on the country's political landscape and our quest as a country for truth and justice, of course, taking into account the apology and its implications, and also the question for political transition and what this means for our political future after the break.
And if there were...
Professor, sorry. Welcome back from the break. It is 26 minutes past 10 o'clock, and this is Views, People and News. But I must say, when you listen to our conversation, you might think we're having a one-sided conversation because all my panelists here are from the opposition side, but we do make an effort to ensure that all voices are represented. And we had reached out to someone from NRM, that's Honorable Brandon Chintu. Unfortunately, he sent us a message this morning that he would not be able to join. He has other pressing things to attend to in his constituency, and that's why we do not have a voice from the NRM, but we certainly made the effort to get someone. So back to our conversation, gentlemen. I think you wanted to respond or add to something that Professor had talked about. We're still talking about the question of the transition, of course.
No, I can only... I don't think it's a fundamental disagreement with what Professor Genga says when he says this is not the state because there's one president, and when he spoke at a platform, it was with him and his wife. I think it boils down to one thing, that the country has been under family rule. Because only Museveni would appoint his wife minister. Only Museveni would appoint his son. I'm a commander, CDF. Only General Museveni will have his daughter in a public appointment, I think, and is it 172 of the Constitution, where you say if somebody doesn't go through public service, this is about me, and someone will be a director of welfare. Only General Museveni will appoint his brother to whichever position he holds. So then the next you have sons-in-law, they determine this and that. Now, when it comes to the apology, under normal circumstances, probably he would have paraded his vice president, his prime minister, and his cabinet ministers
as witnesses.
But it can only be him his wife, and his children. Because tell me, what has Nabanja done to Ugandans, really, in this hemorrhage? What did Professor Nsibambi do? What did the Right Honorable Cosmas Adiebo do, as prime ministers? What did Mzee Samson Chiseka do? What was their role in this hemorrhage? Vice President Samson Chiseka was presumably number 2. Go to his home in Temangalo. It's in my constituency. Really, there is literally nothing. He did not walk away with anything. Actually, that house in Temangalo, he did not build it during his vice presidency. He built it before they came to power. So, I mean, what did Haj Chigongo do in this hemorrhage? So to me, it was appropriate, and I think I salute the president on the choice of people that attended, that graced the apology ceremony. It could only be those that have been participants. I think the only person who was missing, who is lately a player and a critical player, is General Muhoozi Kainerugaba. But that said, I think with all that, you know, Ugandans are very forgiving people. Very, very forgiving. And I don't want to dismiss the apology, although I don't want to accept it. The reason I don't want to accept it right away is because it is cosmetic. I believe it is cosmetic until it is quoted and punctuated with action. For example, if he was serious enough, the next thing I would have expected is the following day, all political prisoners would be free. Look at these young boys and girls that are in detention because they put on a red beret. Even with the UPDF Amendment Act, the few who remained in the house who were not with us rejected that beret thing. Said, as long as it does not have your symbol, which is the national emblem, it cannot be an offense. But look at those girls that are rotting. Talking about Kawempe, just a few days, was it yesterday but one? I met one of the girls that I represented in court in Kawempe. Those that were brutalized and tortured with dislocated bones in the back. Why? Because she went on a campaign trail for Nalukola. Young girl, single mother of 2, no money even to treat herself.
But
those are things.
Yeah, sorry to cut you short. When, again, another phrase that they restore the favor, soften the hardened hearts of Ugandans. What do you think such statements imply about the relationship between the NRM and Ugandans? Because certainly that's a veiled admission that they understand that the relationship is frosty. It is not what it was 40 years ago when they came into power.
No, you know, anyone can accuse Museveni of anything, but you can never accuse him of being stupid. He's not. He's very intelligent. He's a clever chap. Cunning. If he were not president, I would say cunning. He is a clever chap, first of all. So he's able to see that actually he lost favor. He's able to see that he's at the presidency because he holds a gun. He has an AK-47. There's no other reason why Museveni is president. The only reason Museveni is president is because he holds an AK-47 that the rest of us don't have.
And he holds state institutions in
absolutely. Because he has swallowed the state institutions, he's president. So he knows that Ugandans actually do not like him. I understand one day he visited the late Major Kazora's mother. So she was there talking, he was there talking, and until the old woman asked him, "But what did you come to tell me? You know the owner of this house doesn't like you. For me, I even want to take my medicine and sleep. Why don't you just go?" You understand? Ugandans are telling him exactly that, and he sees it. I saw him when he had allegedly just been voted.
And that was Not in Gulu, by the way.
No, it was in Kashari.
In Ankole.
In Ankole. One day he was, on the day he was allegedly announced winner, on the day he allegedly won this last election, he came back from Rwachitura by road. Unfortunately, he goes through my constituency. And they had alerted people, come and receive your hero, the triumphant entry into Kampala. And somebody took a video when he was in Chengera, going through Chengera. There were about 10 people. The others actually closed their shops and went away.
Yeah. Yeah.
The other occasion was, you remember, in Wise during the campaigns, and they decided to descend on people and beat him in the presidential campaigns, where in Wise people decided to line up and chase him and tell him, go away. Go away. When he was coming, everybody was calling him my son, my son. Now when you come and people are calling you our son, and time reaches and the people start calling you this man, you've got to be sensitive to know what the communication is. Ugandans may never pick stones to throw at you. Only Museveni could pick stones to chase Obote. But Ugandans generally do not do that. They keep quiet. You mentioned that in Uganda, he was roundly rejected in the last election. Actually, the truth is that he was rejected in Uganda.
Yeah.
Except that in Uganda, because he knew the cameras were focusing here, he decided not to do the open rigging, the violent rigging. Elsewhere, including in Gulu, in Bushenyi, people rejected him. And he had to use the military, the police, and the state institutions to make sure, one, Noop doesn't cross there, our agents are arrested. Stupid enough, they even would arrest somebody, give him a bond, eventually, and say, what is the offense? Being in possession of electromaterials. And which electromaterials? DR forms that an agent is holding and bringing to us in Kamwacha. So as a person, he knows he has been rejected, and to me it was sensible to come and say and apologize, except that he fell short of going ahead to say the following, as Professor Genga said, and like I said earlier, that you say political prisoners out. This should be the proposed economic roadmap, the proposed political roadmap. I am exiting, and I'm exiting with my family. But if you have apologized for the hemorrhage, and because you say it's a transition, you want to go, now you want to bring the same segments of the hemorrhage to take over from you. What kind of apologies are?
Thank you, Honorable Segona. Honorable Kabaziguruka. So again, still this issue of transition, but we see the president has been very, very busy across the country, moving on PDM tours, spreading the gospel for wealth creation, and by all signs, it looks like his party is ready to field him again as presidential candidate in 2026. On one hand, we have this statement by the First Lady, which clearly seems to send a bit of a mixed signal. What do they know that they are not telling Ugandans?
Well, first and foremost, General Museveni's affinity for power would not really allow for a transition. His appetite for power is insatiable. What we witnessed on that day, in my opinion, was simply being strategic and looking at the way him and his party were decimated in Uganda. And I believe that is why the apology was confined to Uganda. He thinks that him and his party have some popularity outside Uganda, which is definitely not true. In the last election, or just before the last election, General Saleh was stationed in Rwenzori. And one of his key assignments was to deliver Kasese to the NRM, especially given the events, the Reru and... But that did not actualize. They won a few seats, but the majority of the seats are still under the opposition. So he believes that he has achieved the same in Acholi by General Saleh camping there and turning a few previously opposition-leaning leaders to the NRM. I have seen some defections from FDC and other outfits going to the NRM. So he believes that he generally has some support in other parts of the country. And Uganda is still a challenge. So that, to me, was a strategy of trying to buy into people's hearts, especially the Baganda. It has nothing to do with any goodwill towards the Baganda or the country. So what Mama says is calculated towards buying favor from the people of Uganda, which, unfortunately for him, is too little too late. We are not in any way against Mr. Museveni or General Museveni as an individual, but we do not like his ways. And so we are not about to be deceived again. We will see through. We have seen through this facade that he tries to create. And so I believe the people of Uganda will do the right thing in 2026.
Thank you. Professor, just like Michael says, you know, his reading is this is an attempt to appease Buganda, but we know the children of Buganda, and Buganda is hurting. November 2021 is still very fresh in the minds of Ugandans, and the Baganda in particular. We know the children of Buganda are still held in basements and being tortured. The children of Buganda are being held as political prisoners, and a lot of them continue to be picked up every day and disappear and left unaccounted for. So how then would the president or the NRM soften the hardened hearts of Baganda and Ugandans by extension?
You know, it is not possible. You see, when the pain is genuine, you cannot change it by rhetoric. You must treat the cause of that pain. Buganda is legitimately at pains. Like Medard said, they embraced Yoweri Museveni, hosted him in Luweru and Buganda, and even to be able to mobilize an ordinary Muganda involved now Kabaka, when he was still in exile, in this process. And what does Buganda gain from that support? Is the pain that you see all over Buganda. The youth that we're talking about. I mean, you can pass along the main street of Kampala and you'll think, well, things are okay. Then just go to the rural suburbs of Kampala.
The ghettos.
And you go there And you get so shocked you don't even know what to do or to say. And then when you go to what used to be rural Uganda, you'll see huge buildings. And when they tell you it is somebody in government who has built that apartment, has done this, and the Baganda are left with just watching. Uganda used to be as a people, the Baganda used to be to lead the rest of the country in terms of economic activity and prosperity and education. At independence, actually, Uganda was leading, Acholi was second, and under this regime, tables have been turned. It is not a consequence of the failure of the people of Uganda to support President Museveni. They welcomed him when the Obote regime fled. They stood with him. But that is what he has paid Uganda with. And therefore, the smart thing to do for President Museveni is actually to leave, so that people will just accept that at least he has left peacefully, and we thank him for that, and let us close the chapter of whatever happened in this country and start a new chapter. And many of us who struggle for that, it's not because, like they said, we are opposition. No, it's because I'm an Acholi, and Acholi is in Uganda, in part of Uganda. I have a legitimate responsibility to see that Uganda is governed fairly, with equity, and with clarity in the way we do things. The corruption, the nepotism, it takes people nowhere. And the only option left, which is peaceful, is for President Museveni to leave. I know that they have this imagination that in the coming elections they will win through violence and vote rigging. That violence and vote rigging will have consequences that they will not manage, because the country is tired. Even those who are not angry, they are just tired. Even those who are not angry, they are just fed up of poverty. Even those who are not angry see what has been happening, and they know it. And there's no amount of pretense that will cover that. So like Michael, I also appeal to President Museveni that God has been gracious to you and your family. You have led this country for 40 years. 40 years is a long time. Even when you leave, the 40 years is a long time. So just do what is right. You can apologize after. But when you say, this coming election, I'm not going to be a participant, but I don't want to be contested in conflict. So I want all the political actors to sit down and talk about what happens since I'm leaving. And whatever you guys have agreed, that is what I will follow. I can tell you that there will be a renewal in this country. There will be a renewal of love for President Museveni. There will be forgiveness even without apology. And the country can then pick up from there.
Thank you, Professor. Honorable Segona, let me come to you again on the demands of Buganda. We know the president has in the past had meetings with the kingdom. And the kingdom has presented time and again issues that it considers pertinent and that need address and attention as a matter of urgency. We would like to just hear you talk about that a little bit.
Well,
and also if perhaps this apology gives an opener for a new wave of another round of conversations on these demands.
On the round of conversation, I don't think that we should tire in talking, because the alternative to talking is chaos, and none of us benefits from chaos. Prior to becoming minister in the kingdom, I was secretary for a welfare committee, which was charged with the responsibility of identifying every lost property and things that went to the central government, and to negotiate. It was the technical committee that would handle the technical work associated with the discussions. Discussions were generally concluded in 2002. Where it was agreed that these things which had been identified, first of all by law, the property was to be returned in two phases. There are those which were put in the schedule to the Act, then Statute, 1993 Statute on Restoration of Traditional Rulers and Institutions. Now, those were returned without further assurance. Then it was agreed that the others would be subject to negotiations, and the negotiations were not on whether to return, but how, because you find that one of the plot is housing a district headquarters, a public health facility, etc. And the Kabaka said, we do not want to disrupt business of governmental activity. We can negotiate, and then we agree on the return in principle. Then we negotiate the terms of occupation, lease, tenancy, and so on and so forth. And it was the commitment of the government. That one was never honored. I think a few months, 2 years to the expiry of the period which had been given, which was 3 years, Katikiro Mwanyamuli wrote a letter reminding the president. 1 year to the expiry, he wrote another letter and said, by now we should be starting negotiations to see an orderly transition, not necessarily of possession, but ownership. Even if it is a token, just to accept that ownership, but pay me 1 shilling in rent.
Yeah, the recognition.
The president moved away from that. I had expected that in this apology, particularly to Uganda, this issue would be raised. But it doesn't stop with Uganda. In 1966 and 67, when the central government was confiscating property, there are other areas where property was confiscated. Bunyoro, for example, Busoga, for example, Toro, and so on and so forth. Do you remember an occasion when the king of Toro went on a hunger strike in a protest against unfulfilled promises? But again, it doesn't stop at Buganda as an institution, the kingdom of Buganda. It also goes to the people of Uganda, what you have done to the people of Uganda. And the people of Uganda, like I did mention, I think they were trying to hoodwink by saying Uganda. They should have said, and probably they meant Uganda, because they are Ugandans outside of Uganda. And by the way, when we talk about Uganda, we're not talking about an ethnic group. We're talking about a geographical location with all its people, including Professor Latigo, Kabazuguruka, and so on and so forth. I mean, when you deny us services, you're not denying these services to the Uganda. You're denying the services to the people in Uganda. Look at the road network here. Okay? The face of the country. You know, General Museveni is the only man who washes himself so clean but forgets to wash his face. The face of the country, where you have roads, including roads leading to the airport. If you flew over Entebbe and you're coming back during day, just look below the aircraft. Look at the road network you're talking about. At some point, actually, on 2 occasions, I have had discussions with the Honorable Matia Kasaija, the Minister of Finance. Said he has consistently told me, but what do we do? I look at the poverty in Uganda. I look at these white iron sheets. He has said it to me twice. I don't know whether he remembered he had said it the first time. So he even told me. But I saw his legitimate and genuine concern. Said, these white iron sheets, they are nowhere in Uganda. So just fly over Entebbe and fly over Kampala. You see these iron sheets. You see the dusty roads and so on and so forth. So the apology to Uganda is not limited to the institution of the Kingdom of Uganda. It's not limited to the ethnic grouping of the people, the Baganda, but the people who live in Uganda, the people who live in Uganda, in abject poverty. That one is one line. The second is the political line, as Professor Latigo said. It should be time to tell us, people, I want to go. How do I go without causing disruption? Because we do not want disruption. The question of whether he must go is not an issue, because he must go anyway. How he goes is a matter of concern to all of us. I do not want him to go when I'm crossing.
Stephen just reminded me that we have 3 minutes to go. I don't even know.
So I can only say Uganda is enough for all of us. We can live in it in peace, provided we respect each other's space and each other's rights.
Thank you. And I'll take that as your concluding remarks as well, Honorable Kabaziguruka.
Well, I also want to add my voice to that and say that we are at a point where really as to whether General Museveni should remain or go is of no consequence. Our issue and our position would be that General Museveni will go and has to go. And we have already noted that the people of Uganda are very forgiving, and we are ready to forgive all his transgressions, and we will protect him. We can consider passing laws to protect him.
Mike, I attempted it and I sent him an email. I said, can we make laws? He said, so that young man thinks I'm a criminal.
Yes.
Of course, we can consider passing laws, and I think we'd all support it, to pass laws to protect him after the presidency. But let him be kind to this country.
Thank you. Professor Latigo.
Well, we must lift the debate and end this debate about President Museveni and NRM and FDC or DP. Let's have the debate about this country. And if we focus on this country, it will become very clear that those who played their parts, their time is up. And we continue.
Okay, thank you very much. And also, just so you know, next week we have the State of the Nation address. The President will be addressing the nation. So we're definitely going to be paying a lot of attention to what he says. I would have loved to hear your thoughts on that, but we are pressed by time and we have to go. Thank you very much, Professor Maurice Ogenga-Latigo, Honorable Medad Lubega Segon, and you, Honorable Michael Kabaziguruka, for your insights on the show. This is VPN. My name is Judith Atim. The show returns next Saturday, same time. For now, it is bye-bye and have a pleasant